This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Frugal Wizard trademark? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast, along with my lifelong friend Ben, and we're talking about Secret Project 2 from Brandon Sanderson. The full title is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. That is the only time I will attempt to say it because otherwise I'm going to butcher it. But this is the recent Secret Project that came out earlier, beginning of April. Ben and I read it, and I don't know. What do you think of this one? This is the only one that wasn't Cosmere. I don't know. I kind of have a mixed reaction, and honestly, we haven't talked about it yet, so I'm not sure what you thought.
Yeah, I think that my reaction is tempered a lot in the fact that I had read the first couple of chapters when it was released at the very beginning of the Kickstarter, so I kind of remember it being like the general premise behind it, and the fact that it wasn't Cosmere, so there weren't as high of hopes for it, as well as he had talked about the premise behind the book one time on his podcast, and so I was already kind of primed with that information. So I'm not sure how I would have felt about it without having all that background knowledge, but with the background knowledge I did have, I was pleasantly surprised.
What did he say? So on Intentionally Blank, what did he say about the premise?
He just said that he had been toying around with this premise of having it be like a tourist dimensional traveling thing, and on the podcast he had talked about more of a game show type thing, right? Or maybe not like a reality TV where like you can kind of go back and whoever preserves the Titanic for the longest, or whoever, I don't know, or you can kind of compete with two different teams to see who can affect things certain ways. And so that was kind of the premise on the podcast, which he said would get old very quickly for a book. So he kind of took it in a little bit of a different direction, but you still see those remnants in this book.
Yeah, that was joked about in one of the handbook chapters at the end of the yeah. Okay.
So
I thought that was a funny idea, but yeah, I guess that would be kind of a tough full book to write.
Right. And I feel like we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but I feel like that's kind of the pitfall of this book in a little bit, like a little bit, is that there's so many good ideas that are just kind of shoehorned and kind of stuck together, and it might not work as well as it could if he just kind of stuck to one thing, but it also kind of made it feel like you're getting a good bang for your buck with it just being like a random Kickstarter thing.
My impressions of the book, I thought it was very creative. I thought the premise was cool. The plot was very straightforward. The characters were, not super memorable. And that's pretty much it. Like it had some cool ideas. It was unique, but was there much substance to it? Like, not really.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Steven, this is very important. Did you go, I assume you listened to it. Is that correct?
No, I read it actually.
Oh, did you read it? Did you read it on?
I read most of it. I listened to chapters, but mostly read.
Did you read from the PDF or did you read from the Kindle version?
The Kindle version. So I saw the pictures.
So you saw the pictures. Do you see the doodles on the pages?
Yes. The bottom of every page.
Yeah. Did you realize that was telling a cohesive story?
Oh, no, I didn't. Okay.
I haven't really, but there's some videos on YouTube that kind of go through it and talk about the story. So that's kind of what I mean. There's I feel like the how do you say it? It's better than the sum of its parts, I suppose. Or maybe worse than the sum of its parts, maybe. I don't know. There's so many individual parts of this book that are very unique, but they kind of don't really add up to anything that's super special, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have this kind of subplot and these doodles that I don't really think is replicated anywhere else, but also that doesn't really contribute to who's that experience for? You know what I mean? So
that does remind me of the Artemis Fowl. At least the first Artemis Fowl book had around the edges of the pages was written in the fairy language, And
Right.
if you paid attention to the back of the book, you could piece together like the codex of what symbol meant what letter and spell out a message. I think it like spelled out the actual contents of the magical fairy book.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or
kind of
did you
similar.
ever read Animorphs and like thumb through the pages and you could see
Oh yeah,
like the
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
kind of
read
these
so many Animorphs.
for some reason, Reddit thinks I want to be subscribed to the Animorph subreddit, which probably because I clicked on like one post because I was like, oh, I remember that. And now like every time I scroll through Reddit, I like get a post recommended from Animorphs. I'm not
Man,
subbed to that. Anyway.
I wonder how those hold up.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't want this to be wrong, but I think that they're making a series, like a TV show from it.
At one point, like there is an existing series. They made it years ago. I don't think it made it very far, but are they?
I think that there's a new one.
They're making a new one. Okay. Well,
Hold on. Sorry for the.
let's fact check that one because I have not heard of that, and I feel like I would have heard of that.
Well, you're not subscribed to the subreddit.
But yeah, I'm not subscribed to the Animorph subreddit, so how would I know?
But
I really should be since I read like 50 or 60 of those books.
Okay, we'll have to come back to this because I'm seeing some conflicting information. But there's been talks about it in like June of 2020. There's a lot of articles about it. So there you go.
Okay. All right, looking forward to the Animorphs TV show.
Anyway, that was
yeah. So other than so I'm gonna have to go back and look at the pictures and get the little story. I was just talking about the pictures that are at the end of a couple sections of the book where there's like a small story, and those were fun and the drawings were kind of cute. But yeah, like you said, that adds nothing to the actual plot of the book, which was just, it was very straightforward. There was one twist. I mean, I guess let's just go into into spoilers. Should we offer any more of like a non-spoiler thing for people?
I guess is there any segment of population, we also kind of talk about this, that you would recommend this book to as like, oh, you should read this?
There's like so many other books that I would recommend first. I guess like it's for sure a younger audience would like it more.
Okay. Younger audience, and you just really want, like, maybe they've tried a Sanderson book in the past and it wasn't for them, and you're like, I'm gonna give it one more shot.
I mean, there's a lot of people who there's a big younger audience that likes like his Rhythmatist books and the Alcatraz books. Like,
okay, Rhythmatist is doing good though.
I feel like this would be another recommendation for like a 10 to 12-year-old type audience of, they were looking for their next book, and here's one.
Okay, cool. Yep, I agree. Nobody I really know that would love this book. So
yeah, I have some younger cousins who like the younger Sanderson books, so I feel like they would like this one too. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, other than like as far as adult fantasy, I would say there's just so many other books. I wouldn't really. I really doubt I would make it all the way down to recommending this one, unless of course you're a Sanderson completionist fan, which a ton of people are.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Yeah. So I think I think we're ready to dive into spoilers. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but I mean, overall, I would give it like a 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd say like a 6 out of 10. It was an entertaining book. I thought it intersperses the actual plot with selections from the Wizarding Handbook, which was again a fun premise and was mostly funny. I thought it got a little kind of obnoxiously cheesy at times, but it was mostly funny, which is good because a lot of times I'm the one who's like, I can't stand Sanderson's humor. It's all cheesy. I thought it was still cheesy. Like the banana stuff, I didn't really understand why that was funny, but everything else was like pretty well written. And the whole premise of like a existing company that sells these experiences, but is trying to be above litigation and is kind of shady, and that whole like backdrop of the story was fun.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much like this creative art outlet thing that he's looking to do, something new and different, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the actual plot of the book. I thought, like we said, it's very straightforward. The one twist at the end was Jen is alive. Gasp! Who could have seen that possibly coming? I mean, maybe it wasn't that obvious, but I felt like that was definitely going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I call that she was alive. I definitely thought that Ryan Chu might not have been, as much of a golden boy as he was made out to be.
Yeah, Ryan Chu is the worst.
Yeah, that's messed up. So Ryan Chu, I kind of called that. I think most people probably could. And I think that Sanderson always talks about how it's super important for characters to be impacted when somebody dies around them, and you weren't really seeing that with the main character. I forgot what's his name.
Johnny.
John. Yeah, with Johnny.
Right.
Right. So you kind of get the feeling that maybe there's a reason why he wasn't delving as much into like the death of his wife or his partner as he normally would.
Well, but he didn't know that she was alive until she showed up.
Right. I know. I think it just was probably retroactively showing in his writing. You know what I mean? Like where,
Oh, okay.
well, and plus the fact that he didn't really remember her until like halfway through the book or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of brings up the White Room premise. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was done pretty well. Like when it initially started to become obvious that our character John was fairly incompetent and kind of a loser, that was an interesting twist, because you would think, okay, main character, he's going to be cool, he's going to be capable, he's going to be able to do all this stuff, and turns out kind of a loser, kind of a scumball, honestly. But not for like lack of trying, like he had a good heart. So it was an interesting enough character, and but I think once I got the idea of, okay, like this is the direction he's going, then it all clicked into place pretty quickly. And I don't think Sanderson tried to be too tricky with the way that he pulled off the White Room. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I did think it was super kind of random that he was just like an extraordinarily good fighter. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
boxer or whatever. That was kind of because I'm like, man, for somebody that's not very motivated in life, and maybe that was the thing. Maybe he was motivated in life. He just never found his calling in life or whatever. But for somebody that's not very motivated to be able to like be the regional champion or whatever of a boxing or gladiator ring, it felt outside of his character. And then when you combine that with his like random knack for reviewing things, it just again felt like this character that had kind of been a lot of sticky notes that kind of been slapped on one character, and then he tried to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it felt like a YA character. He's got the gimmick. The gimmick is he likes to review everything, and that's funny. And yeah, I agree now that you point that out. Like the fighting, he wasn't really capable of anything other than being the best fighter. And I don't know, like he wasn't really described as a super big guy or athletic guy. It just kind of seemed out of the norm for him to be able to beat everyone at fighting.
Yeah, so that was kind of a little bit hard for me to get behind. But other than that, I did enjoy seeing his progression, like in terms of the White Room. Like, and for those that aren't aware, like a White Room premise is basically where you start with a character, kind of like Jason Bourne, that has like doesn't remember anything about his past, and you kind of grow along with the character in terms of his understanding and stuff. So that's kind of the premise of the book.
Jason Bourne, a better fighter, a more realistically good fighter.
Who's to say, really, though?
I mean, I saw the movie. He's a pretty good fighter.
That's true.
Would you say Severance is that another White Room example?
Yeah, I would say it is. I mean, you're literally
Although,
starting in a white room.
yeah, but maybe with some twists to it because anyway, yeah, Severance a great show. So check out that one if you like this type of story. I mean, what else should we side characters? So Ryan was terrible. I mean, he was like a decent enough character, but he was a total loser. He was the actual loser. Like once we kind of got behind the idea that John was a decent person and was changing for the best, then Ryan really became the villain.
Yeah, I could see that. What about like Cephalin, like that whole romantic interest?
It was just way too like there weren't enough pages in the book to really just kind of like, oh, she's here and there's no other options and we need romance, so voila.
Yeah, I will say though that I did like her. She was kind of like uh her and John were kind of in the same boat, right? Of both being kind of grifters or whatever until they both like came into their own. And I loved that scene where she like did her like big boast at the end where she was able to like summon and give courage to all the supernatural elements that were at play and save the day. I thought that was cool because he had a very similar arc. You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. They were both kind of frauds until they weren't.
Yeah. So I feel like that kind of brought them together, and it did, like, you did see them bonding over that, right? Of both of them kind of going through that.
Yeah. I guess nothing about it seemed like it needed to be romantic other than the plot wanted romance. So there was that. I don't know. I struggle with Sanderson's romance oftentimes, and this is another example. Like it wasn't bad, but it didn't really add anything. The fact that there was a little romance to it.
Yeah, I mean, it was necessary because what else are you going to do in the book? Or
Right.
like
Right. Yeah. Other than that, then the other twist was that the old woman, Thok, right, was actually the Loki goddess, and the stories from earlier in the book were real to an extent, and yeah, another nice little twist.
yeah, I thought that twist was actually pretty good. I also did not know that the name for Wednesday came from Voden. That's something I learned from this book.
Yeah, is that?
Or
I guess that's true.
yeah, I fact checked it.
Okay. Nice. So we do learn something real in the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that you only learn while you read a ton of books,
I mean, it totally sounds like something from an Intentionally Blank episode, just random little facts that Brandon and Dan like to talk about.
Yeah, I know. They're like encyclopedic with their knowledge about some things, and you never know what it's going to be.
Yeah, so this is a quick review. I really I don't think there's a ton to say. I mean, it's a short book, very straightforward plot. Probably not one that I'm going to think about again in the future. Like maybe if I was on a vacation to Scotland, Ireland or something, and yeah, then possibly like I could think about this setting again. But other than that, like it just wasn't that memorable of the book. Kind of a fun story, but not one that, not one I'm really going to harken back to.
Yeah, again, I will say the thing that kind of brought this over the top for me, and like would maybe raise it up in terms of my 6.5 rating, is the fact that like you had all the artwork and the doodles on the pages, and like the fact that like I personally only got like the ebook and the audiobook, but along with that came like a much richer experience than I'm used to getting. And I think that that's probably comes from the whole Sanderson's touch on the Kickstarter thing. So I can
Right.
appreciate that, and I'm hoping that more people do stuff like this in the future.
Yeah, that's fair. The art definitely made the whole thing kind of charming.
Yeah, so yay for that.
Mhm.
And I will say for the audiobook, like Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, like always add a lot to it. So I'm a fan of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the premise was really cool. Probably it made the book for me like, would I want to partake in this company if it was real? Like probably. It's kind of a fun idea. Dimensional travel, being able to like kind of be a little god in your own world, right? Like that's a fun idea, and to affect the course of history in different ways, and some of the humor that the handbook provided when you think about the ramifications of being able to affect history in different ways was funny. And yeah, so I guess where I'm finally landing on it was the story was whatever, but I thought the premise was like a cool enough idea to keep me interested.
Yeah, I think that this story perfectly matched the premise. And again, it's one of those premises that you're like, how has this not been done before? And maybe it has, maybe we just don't know about it, but it's like, seems like it should have been done before.
Mm.
So
yeah, with all the multi-dimensional stuff going on in like nerd media right now, you think someone should have came up with the idea of like, oh, what if you could go and control one of these dimensions?
yeah, and I think again, like the fact that like just that whole premise like would immediately backfire in some way, you know what I mean? Which obviously it did here. So
Yeah.
one thing that was, and again, this is probably too much for this review, but it was interesting that like we didn't explore any of the mobsters, like how they got around like exploding papers and stuff, like exploding writing. Like, shouldn't that have affected them as well?
Yeah, the mobsters were just kind of there. Like,
Yeah.
these are the enemies. Here they are.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our review. Quick episode on this one. Let us know about the Animorphs movie. I'm really curious, or about the Animorphs TV show. I think that's the main thing I'm taking out of this review, because if they're actually making an Animorphs TV show and it's like high quality, which there's no chance that that's ever going to happen, but if there was somehow a high quality Animorphs TV show, I would be so excited.
Man, you know what I think it is? This is gonna bum you out, but I don't know if it was. I'm just trying to think. I remember reading an article about it. It might not have been a TV show. It might have been that they're like doing the classic going back and taking out problematic elements of the books for like their newest like release or like newest publication. I think that might be what I remember reading. I don't know. Animorphs was in the news for something though.
Dang, was there problematic stuff in Animorphs?
Dig deep enough. There's
Huh. Dang, that's gonna rock my childhood. I was raised on problematic. I was raised on problematic media.
I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, that's true. we already know that's we all were, right? We all went through the 90s and 2000s. Was I Tobias? No, I was probably Jake. I wasn't. I was the leader, right? The boring leader.
Of course. Yeah. I thought it wasn't Tobias like the misunderstood, like
Tobias was the red tail hawk.
Red tail hawk. Right? And he like became stuck like that, right? Or something.
He was stuck like that because he stayed in morph for too long. Right. But eventually he got access to the cube again and regained his morphing ability. But since he regained the ability as a hawk, the hawk became like his base morph. So he was faced with this issue of he could morph back to a human and live his life as a human. But if he morphed to a human, he would again lose the morphing ability. So this became a thing throughout a lot of the books.
I see. You have a much better memory. Yeah. It turns out this is a core
memory
for Steven.
This is Animorphs. Animorphs is a core memory. I don't really remember a ton of what happens at the end because I read the initial books in the library over and over again, and for whatever reason, like the last books, maybe they were being written, were just not available. And then once I got through most of them, I finally got to the end, but I read the beginning. I remember super well. The end, I think I kind of remember what happens, but anyway, yeah, the Tobias stuff was good. That was good. There's some good romance in Animorphs as well, by the way.
Well, there you go. This has been your review of Trust and Animorphs. Trust
Not
or not
Trust.
Trust? Not Trust.
No Trust. Just
Trust.
Frugal Wizard's
Frugal
Guide for
Wizards.
Surviving Animorphs. All right. Thanks for listening and putting up with that ridiculousness. See you later.